This is breaking news from Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Former Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs, who is facing charges of DUI and reckless driving, among other charges, in connection with a November crash that killed 23-year-old Tina Tintor and her 3-year-old dog, is expected in court again today. It all starts now on the Las Vegas Review-Journal Live. Hello and thank you for joining us. James Schaefer here with you live as we are expecting to learn more today from Justice of the Peace Bonaventure, who currently has been appointed to oversee proceedings in the former Raiders player's fatal DUI case. According to the court calendar, what's going on today is listed as a status check. Now, what we are expecting this to mean is that Justice of the Peace Bonaventure will be going into reasons as to why he wants to recuse himself from this case, as he has done so once before. But first, before we get into that, let's read. But first, if you want to read more on this story, the Las Vegas Review-Journal has been your center of coverage, the Ruggs case and the crash since November of 2021. Check out those stories online, where the LVRJ has a special page on our site exclusively with our Ruggs coverage. Now, as we continue this stream, it is our plan that we'll be bringing you legal experts to provide analysis and commentary as this case continues. We will be updating you live as the Ruggs case proceeds in the courts. Now, we are expecting this update from Bonaventure. We will have a better idea once we get video in of who will be overseeing this case. If that's decided, that will be followed by the preliminary trial, followed by the trial. Again, you're watching video of the initial appearance of Ruggs back in 2021, and that was in Bonaventure's court. Bonaventure has said that he's recused himself from this due to this initial court appearance and statements he made while he was running for re-election in 2022. What we're expecting to hear today is where Bonaventure lands on this, because he's, as we said, recused himself once before. And as you can see there, Ruggs' defense, that's David Chesnoff, and his defense attorneys, David Chesnoff and Richard Schoenfeld. These guys are attorneys that should be well-known names if you've been following coverage of sports players in town that have had to have legal representation for incidents that have happened. Henry Ruggs being the one that we're talking about today, Marshawn Lynch, and Alvin Kamara. There was also a case of UNLV student Zayon Collins, David Chesnoff, Richard Schoenfeld seen there as well. Now, before we get into the video, and again, we're hoping to have this video any second here with, again, the decision on part of Justice of the Peace Bonaventure on where he will land. If he's recusing himself, again, for a second time from this case, and if he does recuse himself, who is going to oversee this case? There's some other Justice of the Peaces. It might be the case that this might go to Justice of the Peace Letitia, who, as far as we understand it, is overseeing DUI specialty court. Justice of the Peace Bonaventure as well doing that. Before, there was another Justice of the Peace who the defense was upset about, or displeased, we should say rather, due to decisions that she made in the past pertaining to motions on part of the prosecution. But let's go ahead and get into some of the details so that we're kind of updated on this information before we get to the video. So where we are with this case right now is that the Ruggs case has bounced between different judges in the Las Vegas Justice of the Court in recent weeks, pretty much all this past month, with the initial Justice of the Peace Bonaventure recusing himself from that case. Now you may ask why. Well, we've gone into that. This goes back to the first initial appearance of Ruggs after the crash, where Justice of the Peace Bonaventure presided. He set a $150,000 bail for Ruggs after going from Justice of the Peace Bonaventure initial appearance. The Ruggs case was previously overseen by Justice of the Peace Ann Zimmerman, who presides over the DUI specialty court, or she did. But defense attorneys have argued that Ruggs was singled out by Justice of the Peace Zimmerman, who, if we have time, we'll get into later why. Now, District Judge Jennifer Schwartz is in charge of deciding who will preside over this case. She has made a previous decision on this. We'll get into that in a second. After Justice of the Peace Zimmerman, District Judge Jennifer Schwartz assigned the case to Justice of the Peace Bonaventure, who then recused himself from the case. Again, we're expecting that today, bouncing it back to another judge. The reason being, while after that initial court appearance, Bonaventure was running for office, and according to him, he made undue comments about the proceedings during his campaign. Now Ruggs' attorneys are contesting this recusal on behalf of Bonaventure. One of the defense attorneys saying Bonaventure did not disclose what statements he made, nor did he say what particular way those statements made him commit to. What the defense is saying here is that Bonaventure shouldn't recuse himself because he didn't indicate which way he is leaning in the case. Currently, the case is being presided over by Harmony Letitia, or I should say, sorry, that's Bonaventure, who ruled last week that she does not have the jurisdiction to grant a motion moving the case back to Bonaventure's department. Again, this has been bounced back and forth, back and forth. This all leading back to this case. Now, if we could just get into some details about what happened with the Schwartz decision, I think that's important. Jennifer Schwartz on March 15th decided this, going back to Bonaventure's court, and she said that they need to further explain why Bonaventure previously withdrew himself from overseeing the case. Bonaventure had said he didn't believe he was required to explain himself, but stated last week that he would review the case law in preparation for the hearing today. The shuffling began when defense attorneys David Chesnoff and Richard Schoenfeld argued that Ruggs was singled out with Judge Zimmerman, moving it to be overseen and to where we are today. Something I want to say real quick while we have you, I think we're going to have the video here shortly, but we are live right now, and we would just like to let the audience know that if you have questions, we would love to hear them. As I said, as we continue, we will be having a legal expert on this show to answer some of your questions at home. And I'm sure you're curious about how the legal proceedings work, where this case is able to bounce back and forth. This is a high-profile case, and we would love to get some feedback from you at home, either watching Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and find out what questions you have. Go ahead and put those in the comment section, and we should be able to get to those in due time. Producer Nate is telling me that we might have that video. We are looking at that. That's the video right there. So we have Ruggs in the courtroom. We have audio. Let's go ahead and listen in. Bonaventure making the decision.
CR 050378.
Good morning, Your Honor. Dave Chesnoff and Richard Schoenfeld appearing with Mr. Ruggs is now in custody.
Right. This is the continuation of the hearing upon remand from the 8th Judicial District Court. History of this case at the last court date. I was inclined at the last court date to let my disqualification stand. Counsel submitted some case law, and I wanted to fully review that. I've done so. And anything else to add for the record here, Counsel?
Thank you. We submitted, Your Honor.
Thank you. I do have a written order prepared. This court believes that it has properly recused itself under the Nevada Code of Judicial Conduct. I've reviewed relevant case law, including the Ham and Canarelli decisions, and I believe that neither of those cases provide any basis for this court to alter its recusal decision or for the district court to impose written relief. This court has been presented with no statutes, rules, or case law which would allow continued objections to this court's valid recusal decision. Accordingly, the court will allow its prior recusal decision to stand alongside the clarifying information, including in this 9-page order. I'll have the order filed in open court. There's the original on top with 2 copies. We can give a file stamp copy to the state and to the defense. Now, it's my understanding that this matter has been set for a preliminary hearing on May 4th. I'm ordering the matter transferred back to Department 3, Judge Letitia, and the future court date for preliminary hearing stands.
Your Honor, we appreciate you taking the time to study.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ruggs is walking out of the courtroom. We might lose this video any second, but let's just go ahead and just say it's going to Letitia. That's going to Justice of the Peace, Letitia. Let's go into what we just heard Bonaventure saying. A couple bullet points there. He said he did not give further reasoning for his recusal. We knew what we were expecting here was he was going to review case law and say as to why he is recusing himself. Again, if you're joining us, the reasons as to why he said he's recusing himself is because of previous comments he made during his campaign, and the fact that he's made this, he oversaw the initial appearance court. But in there, we heard him say something, and I want to point this out. He said he is not aware of any statutes indicating as to why he shouldn't be able to withdraw himself from this case. That was what we were waiting for in terms of him relaying the case law that he oversaw. He's saying that he didn't see any statutes indicating that he shouldn't be able to withdraw himself from this case. We didn't hear him say what his any further details of why he withdrew himself initially and again now. This has been a question on part of the defense of Ruggs, his attorneys, Richard Schoenfeld and David Chesnoff, who are asking, what was said? What case are you making here? If there were comments made, what were they? What side did you feel they were leaning? I mean, possibly not that side, but they're curious as to what, in fact, these comments are that are causing this case to get bounced around back and forth. And honestly, it's interesting that we still haven't heard what those comments are. I think it's important now at this point, again, if you're just now joining us, Bonaventure has bounced the case back to Justice of the Peace Letitia. This is now the second or third time that we've seen this case, maybe more than that. I believe it was originally with Ann Zimmerman, going back and forth to the court system. Again, this is a high-profile case, and let's highlight that by going through the details of what happened in 2021. Back in November of 2021, according to Metropolitan Police, just before 3:40 a.m. on the morning of November 2nd, 22-year-old Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs was driving his green 2020 Chevrolet Corvette at high speeds northbound on Rainbow Boulevard. For those watching out of town, that's about 5 miles west of Las Vegas Boulevard, where the Strip is located. Ruggs' girlfriend, Kiara Kilgo Washington, who also goes by Rudy Washington, was in the car with Ruggs, as the Corvette approached the intersection of Spring Valley Parkway in a residential area, Ruggs veered into the right lane and slammed into the back of a 2013 Toyota RAV4. At impact, the SUV burst into flames, trapping that driver in the Toyota inside. The female driver, 23-year-old Tina Tintor, was in the front seat, and in the back seat, her 3-year-old Golden Retriever Max. According to police reports, 3 bystanders had stopped at the intersection to help Tintor, but witnesses say she was pinned inside the SUV, still alive. None of the bystanders were able to pull her out, unfortunately, and according to witnesses, while bystanders tried to help Tintor, Ruggs was hanging out of the driver's side of the Corvette with his feet on the floorboard and his body laying on the road. Both he and his girlfriend suffering serious injuries after this incident. When police arrived at the crash site, Ruggs refused to participate in a field sobriety test. Instead, blood draws were later taken at University Medical Center, where he was also being treated for his injuries. The blood alcohol test showing that he was twice the legal limit for a driver in Nevada. That we might have to get into later point in time, that the importance of that. That's been something that's been going back and forth from the prosecution, trying to throw out that blood alcohol test. The reason being that there was not probable cause for it, since it was done at UMC as compared to the crime scene. We will have to get into those details later, because that's a lot more dense. Let's also talk about this case and its charges. This is kind of important. You see those charges on your screen there. If we could just kind of take a look at these. The charges that Ruggs is facing altogether are 1 count of DUI resulting in bodily harm, 1 count of DUI resulting in death, 1 count of possession of a gun while under the influence of alcohol and drugs, and 2 counts of reckless driving resulting in death or substantial bodily harm. Now, you notice I said 2. One of those counts was an injury suffered from Kiara Washington, who was in the car with Ruggs the night of the crash on November 2nd. The prosecution is making the case that Washington was injured, but the defense and Washington have not made it easy for the prosecution to have access to her medical records related to the crash. According to Washington's lawyer, there was a petition asking a judge to prevent the release of her medical records. This was filed back last year in 2022. Initially, those documents were blocked by a judge, that was Judge Robert Walsh, and then later on, Justice of the Peace Ann Zimmerman, who originally was overseeing this case. Again, to go to the back and forth ping pong nature of this, it's been going from judge to judge. This in part, Zimmerman then did approve that motion for that to go through, and that's probably why in part that the defense is trying to make it so that Zimmerman, she will not be overseeing the case. She is now outside of the department that would be overseeing that, so it will not be going to her. If you're just now joining us, it is going to Letitia's court. Attorneys made an effort to get this case in front of Bonaventure, and it seems as though that road's going to be a little bit more difficult if that's what the defense is trying to accomplish. At this point, we've got the video. We know Bonaventure has passed it off. We will have to find out the dates for the next court appearance. We did hear Bonaventure make mention of the preliminary hearing date. I imagine that's going to change as this now goes back to the district court judge, Schwartz, I believe, who is the one responsible for assigning this case. So we're going to have to just wait and see what happens there. It's likely, I should say we're expecting that this is going to get bounced back to Bonaventure. If not, it's going to rest in Letitia's department. At this time, that's really all the updates we have. As you mentioned, we will be following this case as it continues, and the rest of our team will be publishing stories online and in the Las Vegas Review-Journal newspaper as updates become available. Be sure to catch our wrap-up of today's events on 7 to 7 p.m.'s newscast. We also have 7 to 7 in Espanol. Please catch that as well. Those newscasts are twice a weekday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Espanol's once a day in the a.m. We'd like to thank you for watching us live as we're doing this coverage. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.